However it is that you like to sit during meditation, fold your legs, rest your arms. And establish mindfulness and awareness right here and now in the present moment. You should know yourself sitting here in this posture, in this room, with this temperature, with these people. Keep your attention firmly inside. Just for 10 minutes we're going to make the resolution, or the adhitthana, to keep on remembering yourself. So if a sound arises and catches your attention, you can just note very gently, hearing, and bring your attention back inside the body. If you've practiced with the mindfulness of breathing, then you can focus the mind onto the breathing as you feel it from the inside. Now a thought will arise, something you need to do, something you've done, you shouldn't have done, you wanted to do. Thought about food, thought about work. Whatever it is, you just catch that as thinking and bring your mind back. When you catch the mind having wandered away, this is mindfulness. You can see what's going on. Don't feel that you need to keep the mind with the breathing only. The more often the mind wanders away, you catch it and you bring it back, the better. So a feeling in the body attracts your attention. You can feel it disturbing you for a while, but you maintain your self-awareness, recollection, and then quite quickly the mind will shift back to this sense of awareness or presence. Being aware of yourself in this way is a little uncomfortable if you haven't got used to it. But those who've practiced and those who've meditated will have a real sense of bringing the attention home. Sense of rest, a sense of ease that arises when you allow the mind to stop still. So we'll sit silently for another 5 minutes or so. Make the mind as bright and as still as you can. bring the attention inside the body. Try to create the sense of brightness, of light, filling the body, and we'll call this loving kindness. Loving kindness is naturally bright, vibrant, and then we offer this out, firstly to the other people in this room. May everybody here right now be happy, healthy, and free from suffering. May help you to concentrate the mind on the idea of loving kindness. If you picture yourself right now receiving the metta or loving kindness from myself and everybody else in the room, when you feel yourself receiving, it's much easier then to give back. And then as you offer loving kindness out towards all world beings, people you've loved, respected, people you've known, people who have hurt you or abused you, all beings equally, you offer them the loving kindness not just of yourself, but of the whole room and the whole group here. So whether your own brightness of mind and body right now is high or low, you're offering that loving kindness from the entire group out towards all world beings. Sabbe sattha balapata pache kananchayang balang arahanta nancha tejena rakkang pandami sabbaso sabbabuddha nubhavena sabbathamma nubhavena sabbasangha nubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te. So, try to keep the mindfulness going as you open your eyes. Maybe adjust your position a little on the mat. I think this is a new one.
Hyphen announced that the Venerable will be speaking on the topic, the Queen who would cover her kingdom with leather. For those of you who just come, a very warm welcome to you, and please move forward. There are a lot of empty seats in front.
Yes, those who come late have to sit at the front. Okay. So I am Pandit, and I'm from Bangkok, where I've been for 14 years. And as you mentioned earlier, we have a small group in Bangkok. And if any of you come to Bangkok, you have to look us up. Little Bangkok Sangha, or the Little Bang for short. It's not the Big Bang, it's just a Little Bang. So it's easy to remember. And we have a group in Bangkok, not as big and as organized as you are. I'm always really impressed. I came here before when Ajahn Brahm was here also, and I talked to the youth group about 6 months ago, and very impressed by your organization and the willingness and the activities and etc. It's all really quite good. I have a hard time in Bangkok. I have to lead everything myself, and I have to get all the batteries for the microphones, and I have to put the seats out and then clean up at the end of the day, and I don't have a hall, so I have to borrow other people's halls from hotels and businesses and anyone who will give it to me for free. So, yes, I think you should feel very lucky. You have a very good place here and a very good group. And I'm very happy to come here and help whenever I'm in Singapore. This time I was coming to Singapore talking to some business leaders of big business. And not the first people you think would be into Buddhism. You know, we're supposed to be non-materialistic, giving things up, and here these people are with, you know, Porsches and Ferraris and things like that. And yet they're still very interested. This is a particular group, and they're a worldwide organization. They have certain chapters around, and they're interested in meditation, especially mindfulness meditation. This is something of a hot topic at the moment, mindfulness. And the BBC recently did a program on mindfulness, and they said that they had more responses to this program than they had for anything else. It was quite impressive. Last year I did a set of talks in Bangkok, and I put an advert, or we wrote an article, because I know one of the journalists, in Thai Asia Today, I think it's called. And we went on the front page next to an article about super short shorts for... And actually we got more hits. The editor sent me a special email and said, we got more hits for you than the super short shorts. So I was really quite impressed with that. Mindfulness is a hot topic at the moment, and it's something that Buddhism has to offer to the world, I think. It's being taken up in a psychological sense, and people are taking it out of the original Buddhist context and are using it in a psychological sense as a good and a meaningful practice. So what do you think? Is it okay to strip away one part of Buddhism and just take that, throw away the rest of it, the chanting and the bowing and shaved heads, things like that, throw all that out, we'll just keep the mindfulness? Is that a good approach? It's okay. Actually, I think it is okay. I did my degree in psychology, so I'm very interested in a psychological approach. And I think that mindfulness is a good quality. It doesn't matter who you are. And when you look at the original teachers of all religions, actually, for the most part, they were talking about good qualities. They weren't talking about their religion. You know, the Buddha didn't have a religion. He talked about good qualities that are worth developing. And that doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist or not. If a quality is worth developing, then that's a good quality. What are some good qualities, generally? Just have a few, some good qualities. What is a good quality of character that's worth developing? Kindness? Virtue. Well, virtue kind of covers all of them, so you're safe with that one, aren't you? Bit more specific. Other good qualities? Generosity is good. Honesty. Is that it? Is that the best you can do? Faithfulness is good. Loyalty. Yeah. Anybody else this side of the room? A good quality. Any good quality. Should be on the tip of our tongue, all these great qualities that we're developing. You should be... Venerable, just give me 2 minutes, I'll write a list out for you. It should be right there on the tip of your tongue. Compassion, loving kindness, all these kind of things. Now these qualities, are these belong to a religion or not? They're just good qualities, right? One good quality is forgiveness. We associate forgiveness with Christianity. But even in Christianity, they weren't saying, this is forgiveness and it's ours. They're saying forgiveness is a good quality that's worth developing in and of itself, no matter what else you believe. So if you think that there are certain qualities, the next question, good qualities of character, the next question is, what are you doing to develop them? How are you trying to increase your compassion? You know? Does anybody here feel that you have enough compassion already and you don't need any more? Your compassion barometer is full up now. You know, I feed the cat every morning and I get the kids off to school, and that's my compassion. You know, I'm done. Right. So everybody knows that you should have more compassion, right? All of us know. I know for myself too, and I'm fairly compassionate, I think. Loving kindness, metta. Does anyone feel you've got enough metta already? You know, you couldn't do with a little bit more, developing a bit more metta. Okay. If you do the meditation, actually, sometimes you can get it so strong that you're just brimming with loving kindness. And I'm very good at this practice, and I can do this, and I can fill my entire being with loving kindness and spread it out to the entire world. And it's beautiful and it's bright, so long as I'm on my own in my room. As soon as I get out to a taxi driver and I get taken to, you know, in Bangkok, taxis have this habit that they'll always, you ask them, do you know where Chulalongkorn University is? Then they'll say yes. But if they don't know, they just take you somewhere else. And then all this beautiful loving kindness that I had in my room is gone, you know. So, in some sense then, what you are developing by doing the meditation is, some people say it's fraudulent, you know, if you know, you're doing it only in a certain circumstance, but as soon as you're in a difficult situation, it's gone. But that's alright. The more often you bring a certain state of mind to mind, the more often you make that state, the more you, the more you empower that state of mind, the more likely it is that state of mind will reoccur to you. So if you deliberately sit down and call into mind this idea of loving kindness or compassion, then it's going to come up into your mind more readily in the future. And the Buddhist saying was, on what a man thinks and ponders often, towards that there is a leaning in his mind. This is in the Deveda Vittaka Sutta, if you know your suttas. The idea is that a tree that grows up crooked and it's leaning in one direction. So a tree grows up leaning like this. When the wind blows, or when it gets too old and it falls, which way is it going to fall? It's going to just fall in that direction. Same is true of the person. The more often you deliberately set out to encourage a particular state of mind, then your mind will naturally fall into that state of mind more often. So even if you do lose your loving kindness with the taxi driver who's taking you somewhere else, another thing they do is they know the place where you're going, but they don't know the way there. But if you've been doing the loving kindness meditation, then you can see how much you don't have loving kindness. And this is good practice. Seeing when you don't have these good qualities, this is really good practice. This is honesty. And what happens is when you do the spiritual practices, first of all, you start off and it's great and it's beautiful and, I'm so happy and developing these good qualities. And then as you start to look into the mind, you just see horrible things, right? You just see how impatient you are. You just see how much anger you have. You see how much greed you have. I was better off before, at least I didn't, I wasn't aware of these things before. But bringing these things into attention means that you then have the capacity or the willingness to start working with them and starting to work through them. Do you know this story, Jack and the Beanstalk? Actually, I might do this afternoon with the youth group. Jack and the Beanstalk was a spiritual masterpiece, and I can prove it if I had more time, but just at the beginning of the tale, Jack goes to heaven, and what happens actually, remember he takes the cow to market, the old cow that is not giving any more milk, so he takes it to be sold. Now cows and milk represent the world, the thing that supports you, the world supports you, but ultimately it can't make you happy. So the cow getting old means the world, you start to see now that the world isn't giving you anything true happiness. You have to look for that somewhere else than work and jobs and things like that. So he exchanges the cow for 5 beans. Okay? And when he gets back to the house, his mother throws the 5 beans out the window and in disgust. Now the house always represents yourself, and the 5 beans represent the 5 senses. So you're throwing out your 5 external senses and you're moving your attention inside, is the meaning of the story. Once you move inside, of course, then this is when Jack goes up to the giant's realm. And if you know your fairy tales, I hope you do, the first thing he meets is the ogre's wife. He hears the ogre stamping around on the clouds. And fee fi fo fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. I don't know why you singled out us English as the enemy, but he doesn't actually meet the ogre, he doesn't meet the giant, he meets the ogre's wife, and she brings him into the kitchen and says, if the ogre catches you, he's going to eat you. She feeds him milk and cookies, hides him in the oven when the ogre comes, and then helps him get back down. Well, this is what happens when you go into the mind. Like, first of all, you meet the beautiful side of spirituality, and it's nice and it's peaceful. Ever after that, you're only going to meet the ogre. So every time after that, the ogre's wife disappears from the tale, and he only meets the ogre himself. So this is normal, and this is good practice. If you are setting forth the aspiration to develop spiritual qualities, then even if it doesn't feel like you're really beautiful in loving kindness, or even if it feels like your mindfulness disappears very quickly, that is actually good practice. And seeing the opposite of these qualities is a part of developing them. Now, with this group that I was with, they said to me, we want you to come and talk about Buddhism to our group, but we don't want you to mention Buddhism. So how am I supposed to do that? And besides, look at me. I mean, not much I can do there. So the approach was, what are good qualities? What is a good quality to develop? And take forgiveness. We associate that with Christianity. Christians are good at forgiveness. But forgiveness itself is a good and a worthwhile quality. It's worth developing in and of itself, independent of where it's come from. Buddhism also has forgiveness, of course, and all the other qualities. And all these people, all these teachers, they weren't talking about their religion or how they wanted people to be. They were talking about this quality is good. This is a worthwhile quality to develop. And the Buddha gave many lists of good qualities to develop. One of them is mindfulness. So mindfulness is a good quality to develop. And that means it's good in and of itself, whether you're a Buddhist or not. because it kind of comes from Buddhism, we could call it stealth Buddhism, that we're putting out mindfulness as a psychological concept. And this is what psychologists have been doing in recent times. You have this new thing called sati therapy. You have the MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction research been going on in the States for the last 30 years. You have a slew of books out at the moment: mindfulness, the Mindful Manifesto, the Mindful Therapy, Mindful Revolution, all these kind of books. So mindfulness is a good quality in and of itself. Now, if you want to develop a good quality, this is what I was saying to this group, that if you picture yourself getting older, what qualities of character do you want to develop in yourself? So you see yourself as old, which for some of us is further away than others. And I'm 41 now, so I'm kind of like halfway. And so you see, I picture myself old. What kind of qualities do I want to develop? Now, as part of my psychology degree, we had to go to do like hands-on psychology with people, and I drew the straw for going to the old people's home in Bangkok, and there's very few of these actually. And there's a young girl who ran it. She was only about in her early 30s, and I found it interesting that she was running an old people's home, but she was very sharp, and she knew a lot about Dhamma and Buddhism. And so I asked her, what do you learn from being around these old people? What's the quality that you learn? And she said something very striking to me. She said, by looking at the old people, you can really see the way that they've lived their life, because their characteristics become accentuated or exaggerated in old age. So if you've been a busybody in your early life, when you're 80, you're a real busybody. If you've been lazy your whole life, by the time you're 80, you can't move. You'll be immobile. If you've been helping people your whole life, when you're 80, you'll be really helpful towards other people. If you've been creative your whole life, then by the time you get to 80, then you're really creative. And one of the things these people were doing in this home was making fake flowers. I don't know what they made them from, but they're really beautiful. And some of them, they're not even a real flower, but they've made up a flower, but they're still really beautiful. And then we went on to go and do some work with these people, and you could really see it. So the question is, what good qualities do you want to develop, and how do you develop them? Now, the choosing of what's a good quality and what's not a good quality, that's another question. How you develop a good quality is you deliberately set out to encourage it. You deliberately bring it to mind from time to time, as often as you can. Okay. So if you want to grow in loving kindness, it's not enough just to say loving kindness is a good quality. You actually have to sit down and spend a period of time of the day making a resolution, trying to generate this quality in yourself. If you want to be a compassionate person, if you want to be wise, then you really have to make this decision to develop these qualities. In Buddhism, then, we have this quality of mindfulness. This is one of the main qualities that we try to develop. And mindfulness is quite an interesting one. It wouldn't be on most people's lists. Even you ask Buddhists, what's a good quality to develop? Like, mindfulness is usually one of the last that people think of. And yet in Buddhism, this is the key quality. This is the key. This is the doorway to wisdom. It's the doorway to compassion. And it's the doorway to all the other good qualities. So what is mindfulness? When I was younger, we used to deliver sweets. My father had some sweet and cigarette shops, and we used to send our sweets to be bagged up at a local house. And just a few houses up from there was a man who used to sit in his front garden, which is only like 2 meters, and used to sit there meditating. And I asked my father one day, what's he doing? And my father says, I don't know, but it can't be very good. I said, but he's just sitting there. My father said, yeah, he's wasting time. That's what he is. He's a time waster. And for some reason I was still really interested, and I was like, but what did they do? And he said, well, he just sits there in a trance and he's completely oblivious to everything in the world. And it's only like many years later that I found out that as a mindfulness meditator, it's the opposite. You're trying not to be oblivious to everything in the world. Now I take it that most of you have done some meditation, right? So you'll know that one of the first things that happens when you sit down and say to the mind, right, stop still with the breathing. What's the first thing that happens? The mind says no. And it goes leaping off, thinking about something. And sometimes 10 minutes can pass by before you've even realized that the mind has wandered away, right? This is a usual experience. So if the mind can be wandering off thinking about something and you don't even know it, isn't that what you would call a trance? Right. So as a mindfulness meditator, you're bringing the mind back. So then you start to get this view that actually before I was living in a dream state, now I'm more awake and I'm more aware. It's not that you're sitting there in a beautiful trance and you're completely oblivious to everything that's going on in the world around you. So keep bringing the mind back, and you'll note that the tendency of the mind, again pure psychology in many respects, is it likes to be absorbed in something, some activity. It likes to have something to do, the mind. The reason the mind likes to have something to do is because that's the way you've trained it. We can say it's delusion or the devil. We could say it's thousands of years of karma and lifetimes and upon lifetimes. You can call it all kinds of things, but actually the mind is quite simple and straightforward. It's a creature of habit. And if there's one good word for a translation of the word karma, it's habit. All this thing about karma, if my car was stolen, that's my karma to have it stolen. Actually, it's more likely because you left the keys in it. That's probably why it was stolen. It's not your karma. If something, it doesn't mean that you stole something in a previous lifetime. It doesn't mean if you kill a frog, it means you're going to be reborn as a frog for 10 lifetimes. This is kind of pop karma, that the mythology that has grown up around Buddhism and Hinduism, and this isn't what karma was at all. Not everything that goes by cause and effect is because of karma. Karma is actually quite specific. We could translate karma, or certainly vipaka karma, the results of your actions, as habit. And if you do something repeatedly, it becomes a habit. Okay? Whatever you think on and ponder on often, towards that your mind leans. I saw the same saying in Mother Teresa's, it was a monastery, what do you call it? Hospital, monastery. I actually met her. She put her hand on my head. That was quite good. Actually, someone else put her hand on her head for her, but anyway, I felt quite honoured. And the work that they were doing there actually was really quite beautiful. And I was just reading today that they did an experiment with the saliva in the mouth. As you may know, the mouth is the biggest area for bacteria in your body. This is where bacteria all start. That's why young people, clean your teeth. Sean Connery, he almost died a couple of months back from, he got infection underneath a bridge on his tooth. So the saliva in your mouth has an antibacterial quality to it to control all this bacteria in your mouth. And they did a test, and they can measure how much of this antibacterial quality there is to the saliva with a straightforward swab and a test. And they actually did this test with people, two groups. One watched a regular film, one watched a film about Mother Teresa. And then they tested the saliva afterwards, and just watching an hour-and-a-half movie of the work from the missionaries of charity helping people in the hospital actually increased the amount of your antibacterial saliva. It was quite interesting, just from watching an hour-and-a-half. She had, or they had, a sign up in there. It said, "Sow a thought, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character." I think this is a very, very nice saying. This, in fact, I think is the same as the earlier quote that I gave you about Buddhism. What you think and ponder and often, your mind leans that way. So you need to be careful of the thoughts that you sow. Careful with what you think about, what you give attention to. One part of that is being careful with the unwholesome thoughts that you have or that occur to you. And they're going to occur to everybody. I mean, if you're honest and you can look at the mind, you'll see all kinds of, like, ogres in there. I'm always amazed at how utterly horrible my mind can be sometimes. I know one Bhikkhuni Dhammananda, she's quite a good teacher in Bangkok, and she's really quite beautiful and very charismatic and charming and peaceful. And I did an interview with her and a couple of years back. She was complaining to me about how angry her mind is. I thought, wow, if you have anger in your mind, then, then I'm doing all right. So you will see it. You will see all these unpleasant qualities and unwholesome thoughts and greed and jealousy and unforgiveness. All these things are part of your nature. They're part of your karma. They're part of your mind. So you accept it and you see it. But if we can see it mindfully, then they don't take hold. If you maintain this sense of mindfulness, then these things don't take hold in the mind. And then if you see something wholesome, something good come up, then you allow it, you develop it. Okay, so this is right effort. When you see the akusala or unwholesome state of mind arise, you strive to abandon it. Unwholesome states that have not arisen, you try to prevent them. You prevent them from arising. Wholesome states that have not arisen, you try to arouse them. And wholesome states that have arisen already, you try to maintain them. This is straightforward mindfulness practice, really. So you'll see this tendency of the mind that it loves to get absorbed in something or other. You get absorbed in what stimulates, in what you like. And this then becomes a habit. So you work hard with a business, with a family, with hobbies and things like that. And then this is what will be occupying your mind because you've trained your mind that way. I like to sit and look at people in airports and places, and I see them like thinking going on. And I always like to guess what people are thinking about. And sometimes I ask as well, they think I'm very, what are you thinking about now? And usually in Thailand, people are thinking about food. In Britain, it's thinking about the weather or football. And I'm told, I don't know, but I'm told in Singapore, people are thinking about money. You'll do what your karma is, what your habit is, the things that you've called into your mind, that you've that you've become interested in, that you cherish, that you pay attention to. Those are the things then that you hang on to when they come into your mind, and that's the way you've trained your mind. And you've trained yourself to always be thinking about something that you want, something that you dislike or something that you like. Some way of adjusting the world around you to get some more money, get some, do things with your family or school or whatever it is that you're doing. So you're always teaching the mind to be working, to doing things. So the mind does as it's being taught. And this is why when you sit down and meditate, the mind just looks around for something else to get absorbed into. Anything, sometimes. I'm not part of the forest tradition anymore that Ajahn Brahma's from, but I started there from Amravati. And there we'd do these all-night sittings. And we'd sit from 7 p.m. till 4 in the morning. And you're not allowed to lie down. You can stand up and walk, but you're not allowed to lie down. I made this resolution and I said, no matter what happens, I'm not going to get up until 4. I'm just going to stay on my mat. And I don't have to meditate, I can do anything I want, but I'm going to stay on my mat. And at 11 o'clock, when I was bursting for the toilet, I realized how silly that resolution was. So with a couple of breaks for the bathroom, I did manage to stay on my seat the whole time. And you know what happens? The first hour, you're really going to meditate all night. And then the second hour, you're kind of really going to meditate all night in your mind, but your body is down a bit. And the third hour, you're really and then usually 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, the sleepiness or tiredness will just disappear like that. And then the mind is just very, very quiet and very, very peaceful. It's really quite an experience. But during these sittings, because you're sitting there all night, you would just call up anything. Just something to think about. Anything. People that I used to know, insults that people had given me, drag that one out of the closet, brush it off. Go over an old insult that somebody told me, and failures that you've had and successes that you've had and things like this. Anything, just something to think about, because that's a habit. The habit of the mind, that's what you've trained it to do by continually pushing yourself to be thinking about stuff, by attaining stuff, doing stuff, passing exams, getting married, getting a job, working, house, pension. And then you get to the end of it exhausted and you wonder what are the good qualities that you've developed. This tendency of the mind to get absorbed in something, in anything, is what we're going against with mindfulness. So you see the mind wandering away when you do the meditation, and then you bring it back. And this is standard mindfulness meditation practice. To do this, when we're bringing it back, you come back to a sense of self-presence or self-awareness. I like to say recollection. Has a nice sati. The word sati actually means to recall. And sampajanya means the feeling of awareness. So you're recalling into mind this feeling of awareness. I would say self-awareness. That doesn't mean it's a self as in an atta or atman. It's nothing connected with non-self. But just this sense of presence. And then you can see just how much you like to be absorbed in things. So you train yourself for a certain amount of time every day of non-absorbing, not absorbing into stuff, not absorbing into some line of thinking, some line of activity. A few years ago, there's a monk just down the road. Actually, he lives in Singapore now. But he's just down the corridor from me, and he got a satellite TV. And he said, you can get 2 TVs off one dish. And he said, do you want the other line? And first of all, I was like, well, I just want to watch the news, And then I thought, when I get home, when I get back to the temple, what's going to be easier, to sit down and do mindfulness meditation or just flick on the TV? And the TV is easier, so I didn't take it in the end. I can get the news on the radio via the internet. So this is the training is to remember there are very nice pastimes, all these nice books and chit-chat. I just see how people love to chit-chat. This is another one. There's nothing wrong with chit-chatting with people, but you need to take a certain period of time every day aside and make a deliberate determination. This is going to be the time that I'm not going to get absorbed in stuff. I'm not going to get absorbed in some line of thinking, some line of wanting, some line of doing. And every time I feel the mind going out, you bring it back. Then you feel the mind going out again, and then you bring it back. Once you've gained some kind of clarity of the mind doing this, some kind of stability, what you're doing is you're gaining a sense of yourself independent of the content, independent of your content. It's a bit like these screens. If you see you're looking at this screen, what you can see is everything that's going on the screen. then you miss the screen itself. The screen itself is always there, but when you go to watch a movie or something, you're caught in the content of the screen. And the content of the screen comes and goes, it changes. But the screen is actually always there. So with this practice, you get this sense of yourself as always being there, independent of the content. So you get the sense of your own being independent of the anger, or independent of the stress, or independent of the dreams and the desires. When you get a sense of the independence, you're stepping back from these thoughts and emotions. So you step back from anger, and suddenly it doesn't seem like very pleasant anymore. If you're willing to look at it, it's not very nice being angry, irrespective of whether the person deserves it. I'm sure the person deserves your anger. Irrespective of that, the feeling within yourself isn't nice, and if you're willing to look at that, you automatically start to let go. And this is wisdom. Wisdom only attaches with light and awareness. Wherever you put light and awareness and mindfulness, wisdom will start to arise, because light and awareness only operate on what is good. This is why vampires can't stand light, right? All these vampire movies that you see. Forget the Hollywood version. The myths about vampires were actually spiritual tales, just like the Jack and the Beanstalk and the other ones. And if you shine a light on a vampire, it sizzles up and it dies. Okay? There are other qualities to vampires. Vampires represent the bad qualities of your mind. So, another quality, they can only come into your house if you invite them. Right? What does that mean? You can't say this anger is not invited, or this jealousy, or this greed, or this bad quality. You yourself have invited the quality in. If you don't invite it into your house, it can't get hold of you. If a vampire bites you, you become a vampire. Which means, if anger bites you, you become angry. You become an angry person. You can't be a good person, but be angry. Because right then, you are the anger, because you're involved in it. Same with jealousy, or greed, or impatience, and all these other things. You can't be a beautiful, patient monk, as I would really like to be, while I'm being impatient with the taxi driver. You can't do it. Once you call that quality in, you become that kind of person. So this practice is stepping back, taking a step back from all these qualities. And if you have a sense of yourself, then even when the unwholesome qualities arise, you can see them beginning and end. If you see the beginning and end, they cease to have power over you. Because you see, you're still there when they're not there. You're not getting caught in the content of the mind so much. So, this, because the mindfulness or the awareness attaches only to what is wholesome, if you're willing to look, if you're willing to be mindful, it'll slowly start to clean up your character and your being. And this is doing it in a non-egotistical sense. Because if you really want to be compassionate and I'm going to be the Dalai Lama and, have all this compassion, that's just another ego trip, isn't it, really? You just want to be great. If you say, I'm never going to be, angry again, of course, that's not going to work either. This is just your ego. So you need a tool to be able to work this change, and this is the tool. If you shine the light of awareness on things, then the good qualities will arise. But you only have to do this in the present moment. You don't need to solve all the qualities of your life. You don't need to say, well, I have all this anger inside me, and how am I going to get rid of it? This is what psychologists do. This is psychology. This incredible created world that you've thought up with all your constructs and your character and your wishes and your desires. And you can come and lie down on the couch, and we'll analyze you, and we'll write it all down, and we'll get the big book, and then at the end of it we'll say, this is you, this book here. We've analyzed you now, and this is what you are. In Buddhism, that's not what we're doing. We don't need to worry about all the stuff in the past, or even the future. All you're worried about, all you're interested in is right here, right now. with the mindfulness, shining the light of mindfulness. Everything else then starts to correct itself or come right if you give it time and patience. So this is why the Queen, when she left her kingdom, because I had to work the title back in at the end, you see. This is why the Queen, when she left her kingdom and went out of her palace and she stubbed her toe, and she was so angry, she told the ministers, you have to cover this entire kingdom with leather so that I won't stub my toe again. And then the minister said to her, you know this story, yeah? No? Okay, good. So the minister said to her, instead of covering the whole kingdom with leather, why don't you just cover your feet with leather? And that's what shoes are. So that was the invention of shoes. The point of this tale is that you don't have to cure your whole character. You don't have to cure your past or solve all the things that you did wrong in the past or analyze your relationships with your parents and things like this. And you don't have to worry about your future so much. What you're interested in is the present moment. If you're shining the light of awareness just on the present moment, just where your feet are going, then this is enough to what? To absolve all of these problems and to change the character and to grow in the good qualities. Okay, so it's just gone 12:05. I'm told I have to stop at 12:05.
Thank you very much, Venerable, for the inspiring talk. Let's say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We have time about 15 minutes for question and answer before Venerable proceeds to the lunch. So anyone has a question?
And if you don't ask any questions, then I'm going to ask you the questions.
Thank you very much. If let's say we have a problem, and particularly with people, and we know we cannot reach out to them, but we see it very clearly for them that, it's not the good way for them, and therefore it affects us too. But the person is not receptive. How would you go about? Because, the anxiety is eating me up too.
Right. You can really only help somebody when they want to help themselves. And this is the big problem of psychology, actually. And quite a few tests have been done on this, that people who go to psychologists for help, roughly 1/3 get better, 1/3 stay the same, and 1/3 get worse. And it's almost the same statistics for people who go to a temple for help. Or people who, it really doesn't matter what the therapy is, that the statistics remain roughly the same. It's something psychologists don't like to tell you because you lose your fees and so really people can only change when they want to change, and there's nothing you can do about that. So the work that you should be doing is the work on yourself. If you grow in a certain quality, you start to radiate that quality, you start to pass that quality on to other people. And this is just a kind of timeless truth. So the best thing you can do is work on yourself. And when you feel yourself becoming impatient, you work on your impatience. And when you find yourself suffering over the way someone else is acting, then you work on your own suffering. And it works paradoxically, like most things when you're working inwards. Most things work paradoxically. The more you give up, the happier you are. The more you have. It's just paradoxically. The more you give, the more you seem to receive things. It's a paradox. It always works. So you work on yourself, and it takes time for that to filter through to the other people. And the trouble is that you want instant results. You see, like I'm working on myself, but it's not changed them. So that's still not working on yourself, is it? Because you've got to work on that impatience. But it takes time, and it's like sunlight. Things grow, but grow slowly. But we want to like chop down trees and build something very quickly. And good qualities are like sun and rain. They rain on everybody. They work slowly. So I actually had a friend who was in a terrible condition, the worst condition a guy can be, and the cause was a girl. And he went crazy, actually, he went really crazy. And I tried to help him, and I couldn't. Didn't work. And then, it's about 2 years later, I called back to my hometown, and I saw his mother. And she said to me, you know, while he was going through that crisis, she said, I really want to thank you for helping him so much. That made all the difference. I didn't think I'd done anything. I didn't think it had worked. The point is that it's an invisible thing. When you're working on your own inequalities and you're practicing patience and you're practicing forgiveness, you're practicing loving kindness, you want it to change the other person right away. It's not going to work that way. But over time, it's going to have a greater effect. So you have to be patient with these things. Yeah.
Any more questions?
We have a sense of non-self, you're saying, yeah. Buddhism is about paying attention to the right aspects of your existence. And if we take the idea of enlightenment as unconditioned, the uncreated, the unborn, the undying, the deathless, this is something that you can't do. There isn't anything that you could possibly do with your mind to attain to the unconditioned, because it's unconditioned. It doesn't have conditions. You can't create it in any way. Therefore, whatever enlightenment is, it must already be there, and it can't change. That's the nature of the term, the definition, the deathless, the unconditioned. So we have this problem that if enlightenment itself, you can't do it. Nothing you can do can get you there. And this is how a lot of teachers teach. People like Krishnamurti or Eckhart Tolle, they're very inspiring, but you keep, well, what do I do? And they can't answer. I really like Eckhart Tolle, I think he's good, but what do you actually do? So this is the difference between a Buddha and a Pacceka Buddha. A Pacceka Buddha can't teach. He can't take other people to the right state. Whereas a Buddha can, because he says there are certain things that you should pay attention to, certain aspects that foster wisdom, and other aspects that don't foster wisdom. So if you look at a great big giant pizza and you focus on the tasty aspect and the cheese, and we never get cheese in Bangkok, so I know what I'm talking about. If you focus on that, you're going to increase the quality of desire for the pizza. If you then weigh the pizza and tap into the internet and find out how many calories are in it, then you're going to be fostering this idea, I'm not eating the pizza, right? If you pay attention, and this is the same with everything, you pay attention to the right aspects, then the mind will go in a different direction. And this is essentially what Buddhism is, the whole of Buddhism. He said there are certain aspects of your existence that aren't true or real in an ultimate sense, but if you pay attention to them, they take you in the right direction. So the self is like that. Actually, he talked many times about the self. What was that Dhammapada saying with an arrow maker takes the wood and he straightens the wood. A canal maker cuts straight channels in the ground to direct the water. A carpenter bends and shapes the wood to the way that he wants it. And a yogi shapes himself. So he was often talking about the self as much as he was talking about the non-self. So the non-self is actually just an aspect of your existence. It's not an ultimate statement. He never said, there is no self, because you have a self. You have an age, you have a character, you have a disposition. This is yourself. The point is, it's not a permanent, unchanging self, which is what an Atman was in India at the time. So you're paying attention to this quality of non-self because it takes you in the right direction. When you see it like that, it's just a tool. Is that... I kind of stopped. I didn't expect to stop there. I surprised myself. I wasn't... Yeah. It's actually a tricky subject, non-self. In short, you see, if I start answering it too much, then we'll be here all day. But the word itself, the word non-self was an adjective, and it described the eye. So anything you can see with the eye is not yourself. Anything you can smell with the nose is not yourself. Any sound that you can hear is not yourself. This is actually how the word was used. It wasn't used in the sense of, you don't have a self. Yeah. In fact, the Buddha is always saying, you should develop yourself, you should develop your character. As one sutta says, monks, I see nothing in this world so conducive to enlightenment as a cultured character. Okay. So, not many questions. That means I've either done a really good job or a really bad job. I'm not quite sure which.
Maybe one last question?
At the back there. Sounds like they're having more fun upstairs, doesn't it?
Now I myself am a student, and I have been feeling very stressed out by school life, for example. And I always, as I said, I have been always stressed out by school life, and I struggle. I want to give up sometimes because of the subjects that they are really, really difficult and tough for me. And then, in this case, is it possible for us to put the context of mindfulness into this matter?
Yes. Really, and then if you do, as a minimum, 15 minutes a day of meditation, the trick is to do 15 minutes a day whether you want to or not, and this is very important. So you're doing it the times that you don't want to as much as the times that you do want to. Then when you do want to do more and you feel it and you're in the groove, then you can do more. But you're doing more because you're enjoying it. But the 15 minutes a day you do anyway. Best is sometime after you've gotten up in the morning, but it can be at night also. And so you put aside that period of time every day to engage in non-engagement of the mind. So you're not thinking about stuff. You're deliberately disengaging the mind for a short time. And this works magic, actually. It can have a real knock-on effect. And you start to remember it. It starts to crop up more and more if you've been giving attention to this state of mind. Remember, whatever you give attention to will be more likely to reoccur into your mind. Straightforward karma, straightforward psychology, straightforward habit forming, learning, if you've done operant learning and things like that. So if you give attention to this state of mind for 15 minutes a day, it will be more likely to come up. And when it comes up, you find that actually there's little peaceful moments throughout the day, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. There's always these little peaceful moments. I used to work in, if you can imagine the absolute worst place in the universe for mindfulness, probably worse than the war zone, what would that be? What was the worst possible job that you could do for mindfulness? Because I did it. In my view, I used to work in a jazz club, and we had live music on, and it was loud, and the place was always understaffed, and we had to work very, very fast. And this is not a place conducive to mindfulness. and peacefulness. And one of the things I found was when we put money in the cash register, you press enter, and this cash register used to print out the ticket before it would open the drawer. So you're running around like crazy, and we were really busy. We were all everybody was in their very early 20s or younger, and we were all very fast. We used to run around like crazy. And then you'd stop, and you'd have to wait for 3 seconds for this stupid drawer to open. And you, come on. So after I'd been doing a little bit of meditation, I caught this moment, and for the 3 seconds that it would take to print out the register, I would just stop and breathe. And that was my meditation, and this made a huge difference to the whole night. I had this sense of a grounded sense of being, or a place that I can come back to, independent of the content, independent of all the stuff that I'm doing. So it's the same as school. You can't, you can't do a little meditation that's going to make all your topics easier. It's not going to work. If there was, we'd give it to you, or we'd make the topics even harder. So there isn't any trick that's going to make that easier. But you can have this sense of space and this sense of stillness, independent of what you're doing, if you develop it, if you put your mind onto it. So I think that's it. We're done. We're ready. Okay. Yeah. So I give the blessing just before I leave.